Parents who have disowned or genuinely stopped loving your child. What happened? I have disowned my oldest son. He molested my daughter. Has been diagnosed as a sociopath and we have restraining orders against him. It isn't fun and I never thought I would be that parent. My parents disowned my oldest sister. She always struggled growing up more than us. She became a teen mom with a bad older dude. Partied a lot, etc. But my parents helped her a lot. They do okay for themselves. But had a no co-signing rule for all 6 of my siblings and I. Still, they co-signed for her house so she could get a head start. She didn't pay the mortgage for almost 3 years before my mom got served in front of all the other nurses at her work. My parents worked tirelessly to try to work out deals where my sister and her family kept the house and got some leniency. But to no avail. Because my sister never showed up for court dates. During this time, she paid $12,000 for IVF and got pregnant with her 5th kid. When my mom demanded some of the money back, she accused my dad and my brother of beating her sons when my parents took them to Disney World. He didn't, and said she'd file a police report if he asked for money again. They kept asking. 'Cause it wasn't true. She awkwardly joined us for Christmas. And punched my brother in the face during the meal for humiliating her oldest son by asking him if he wanted to work at my brother's company for good pay. Her oldest son is in and out of jail. And my brother was trying to help him after his release. But her son said he didn't want a job and got mad. She then called the cops and told them the same brother had illegal guns in his truck. And they came on Christmas night and searched his truck, no guns found. Needless to say, she is not welcome anywhere near any of us and my mom still cries about it. But refuses to talk to her again. A little different. I was disowned. But I deserved it. I was an addict and a mess for a long time. My mom couldn't keep bailing me out of trouble and watch me self-destruct anymore. I wasn't living at home. She came to see me one last time to tell me she was done. Not to contact her. She would no longer have anything to do with me. She was in pieces. I can't imagine how hard it must have been for her. But it was the best thing she ever did for me. Once she cut me off, my rock bottom came hard and fast. After a little while of living on the streets and my addiction consuming me, I made my way to a detox center. Got a few days clean under my belt and never looked back. That was almost 15 years ago. After I was clean a little while, I contacted my mom. And little by little we built a relationship again. And now we're really close. I am forever grateful to my mom for letting me fall and letting me back into her life. My ex-wife disowned my son. We both married young when I was in the military, high school sweethearts. She became pregnant 6 months into our marriage. I don't think she connected with him at all after he was born. The most she did with him was Instagram photo shoots where she painted herself as #1 mommy. When he turned 3, I left the military. A year after that, she ran for the hills. I remember it like it was yesterday. I sat down with her at a local restaurant to talk divorce plans. We split all of our financials and material items down the middle. We finally got to custody for my kiddo. Something I dreaded to discuss because fathers never gain custody in my area, and she tells me, I want absolutely no responsibility. I was taken back and I asked if she was sure. She was. That one sentence hurt me more than anything else that happened during that time. My biological father wanted nothing to do with me, and now I was seeing it happen with my own child but with his mother. I received full custody and she married within a year afterwards. She had another child too. Her parents try their best to be a part of his life, but she still does her best to avoid him. He's 7 now and used to it. But I know it weighs heavily on him. Shit sucks ass, but it's life, I guess. I just woke up and saw all the upvotes, messages, comments, and awards. I want to say thank you so much. I didn't expect this level of response. I don't usually share something as personal as that. My kiddo is a very awesome kid that has shown great resiliency beyond his years. He has rolled through the tough times better than even I. I can just hope he doesn't question his worth because of what his mom did. I know I questioned mine due to my own father leaving, and that has left scars that will not heal. Well, thank you all again, and you all have a wonderful day. Not my kid. But my sister I raised for several years. I was a senior in HS when my parents had my sister, completely unexpected. They were 58 and 55. I never really got to know her much as I went away to college when she was 5 months old. And was in the Air Force by the time she was 1.5. I saw her twice on leave. And got pics. But the way life was working out, we never really got time together. Fast forward. Our dad dies when she is 2. And my stepmother is raising her. She was a terrible parent. Like the kind that saw one of her kids run away at 16 to halfway across the country. Another run away at 15 and get married. And one that is just a loon who spent his life bouncing around whatever hot MLM program was out there as a career. She also convinced my dad to send me to a pray away the gay camp in Tien. When I was 15. So when my sister was 11 and begging for help, I took leave and went to her. Surprisingly, my stepmonster was happy to get attorneys to draw up the paperwork for me to become my sister's guardian. And even pay for it. So I'm raising my sister and things are okay until she is about 14. Then I caught her doing these videos online talking dirty, trying to get guys to jerk off. So that was a mess of trying to get those down and suing the people that hired her to do them. Ran away for a week. Hiding out at a friend's house. Found her when she was caught shoplifting. A Band-Aid charge at 14. Trying to steal the phone of a boy she was dating to say if he was talking to other girls. It happened on base and I managed to talk it out of being a bigger thing. A second Band-Aid charge with friends breaking into the NCO club to try to steal beer. I was told I had to leave base housing at that point. My security clearance was suspended to make sure she wasn't putting me in a position I could be compromised. Still 14. Arrested with a stolen military ID trying to get into a bar. 15 escapes rehab. 15 escapes rehab again. 16 things seem good and she is taking school seriously. At 18 she was accepted to RISD. Graduated with honors. And had an actual decent paying job with a web company with benefits and everything. Started getting stoned a lot. Lost her job. Sold her car to pay bills. Lost her apartment. Still hadn't bothered looking for work. Got her trust fund at 24. Blew over $400,000 in 2 years. Nothing to show for it. Had multiple cases against her for drugs. Was restricted to the state. But decies to go follow fish around anyway and sell Molly. Got picked up for hooking and possession out of state. Was returned to where she was detained and somehow released pending trial yet again. While awaiting trial she was caught holding enough packaged for sale heroin to qualify as a distribution charge. By then, I hadn't heard from her for almost 7 years. And only managed to keep up with her reading the police blotter or from RTHE occasional attorney that she had contacted me to verify I would pick up her legal tab. I wouldn't. Against any logic. She was out of prison in under 3 years. I heard she dimed a bunch of people out to make it happen. She showed up at my house. Asking for a place to stay. I said I couldn't have her in my house. But I'd get her a place for the night and then help her locate a place of her own. That night she broke into my house. Nearly got shot by me while doing it. And tried to spin some story that she was looking for something she dropped in my house earlier that day. Despite never actually entering my house. I told her she had to go. She threatened she would call DCFS and tell them I was abusing my kids if I didn't go with her to an ATM and give her all the money I could withdraw. Told her to GTFO before I exercised the castle defense law and dropped her. Took out a restraining order the next day. And in doing so found she once again left state when she wasn't supposed to have and violated her parole. So back to the clink. Since then she's been dead to me. My biological father divorced my mom and also his 3 kids. Basically bouncing out of our lives and making it clear he wanted next to nothing to do with any of us when he left. Man, years later. At my older sister's funeral. That he had the fucking gall to attend. I asked him why he did that. He said, "I thought it would be easier for everyone." He actually meant it was easier for him to run home to his wealthy family and enjoy a second adolescence while my single mother worked 2 jobs to feed 3 kids under 10 with 0 child support from him. I have been legally disowned by my father. When I was 11, my mom was diagnosed with terminal cancer. This was her second diagnosis in around 4 years. Obviously she recovered the first time after intense surgery and a lot of chemo, and he did not want to look after her like he did before. He also had a new GF and her family to look after apparently, and he had no issues leaving us. When my mum passed away when I was 14, my brother, grandmother, him and I met up to discuss who I was going to live with. The plan was my brother and his family. Father was never considered, and he showed up and declared that he was in the process of going to court to legally emancipate himself from me. He went out of his way to legally declare that I was no longer his child. Just so that my brother, 22 with a wife and 2 young children already struggling on one paycheck, couldn't seek child support. Needless to say, it stung, coming only days after my mother's funeral. My mother and her sister were both adopted into a great family. Recently, my grandfather fell ill and we were told to prepare to say goodbye. So the family gathered. My grandmother has had a hard time with her memory since she had a brain hemorrhage. But she welcomed my aunt into her home during this tough time. Whilst my grandfather was in his final week, Wendy, aunt, took my grandmother's ATM card and proceeded to spend well over $1,000 on herself and get herself a motel room. She attempted to steal their car. When my uncles found out, she basically disappeared into the wind. After my grandfather passed and his funeral was all sorted, my grandmother went to an attorney to write Wendy out of any inheritance she would get from their estate when she passes. She didn't press any formal charges, because the whole process would have been lengthy and more painful for her. She didn't need the extra stress. I'm pretty sure one of my uncles also threatened Wendy to make sure she stayed away from my grandmother from now on too. As Jehovah's Witnesses, my parents disowned my siblings and I several times since I was in my late teens. One of the JW rules is that you do not associate with others who know the truth, but refuse to follow it. Including family and parents are encouraged to disown any children who have left the religion. The first time was when I was 19. It upset me. I was heartbroken and eventually they changed their minds only to do it again a couple years later and so on until I stopped caring and no longer attempt to be a part of their lives at all. I disowned a family member. Not a child though. We were very close. Until he ended up being caught in a pedo sting. Then I turned my back and haven't looked back. I have a sister the age of the girl he was supposed to meet. I can't associate with scum like that. FYI. According to my sister, nothing was ever done to her. I wouldn't say I've disowned or stopped loving my son. But it's real tough to find love for him. He's almost 14, next month, and he's currently out of our home at a treatment facility. He's averaged 2 arrests a year for the last 2 years. And he's attacked my wife several times. Our daughters several times. And the neighborhood kids several times. He's run away from school. Run away from home. And tried to push me off the roof of our house, after threatening to jump off and hurt himself. We have become that family in our town where the police are called to our home on a semi-regular basis. He's been getting more violent as he gets older, not to mention bigger and stronger. And I honestly don't see an end in sight. The key fact I'm leaving out is that he's been diagnosed as high-functioning autistic and is also bipolar. That's like putting walls around a tornado and expecting it to stay inside the walls. A lot of what has occurred he had little control over because of the way his mind is, where he's constantly at war with himself. Structure versus chaos. And my wife and I have tried desperately to give him the best life we can while keeping ourselves and our daughters safe. But I'm tired. It's been 8.5 years we've been going through this with him and I've been ready to throw in the towel on him for a while. But my wife refuses to let him go. So we wake up every morning trying to give him the best life for him and our girls. Not a parent. But my parents stopped loving me the moment I was disfellowshipped as a Jehovah's Witness. And I was promptly kicked out. I knew nothing of how to live on my own at the time. But I had a decent job and survived. My brother stopped associating with them 2 years later and lives with me. And they since moved away, 1,500 miles away to be exact. It's easier to tell people I am orphan or that I do not have parents. 'Cause it's hard to explain how they would stop loving or want to associate with their own son over some stupid cult rules. Since it seems to have widened a bit. A family torn apart. Based on an aunt and her niece. Aunt starts signs of dementia at a relatively young age. Is moved into an assisted living home. Niece, who bounces around jobs, gets Hyrex to go visit her about once a week. Take her out to the mall or a walk in the park. Whatever. Paid handsomely. We get an alert that aunt has a check bounce from her account that should have $5,000 in it. Niece has drained the account. Proven beyond a doubt. With receipts. Niece would take aunt to aunt's bank machine every Friday and withdraw $200. Then fill her car with gas, aunt can't drive. And charge us hours when she clearly didn't spend hours with aunt, charged us claiming she took aunt to appointments, there was no appointment. We can actually call the doctor FYI. The family rift? For some bizarre reason niece's family took her side. My father said my mother's issue was she had too many children and it gave her some kind of brain fever. Much like a dog that loses its mind after having too many puppies. My mother said my father felt trapped by me. He was planning to leave when it was just my 2 older brother, and then my mother got pregnant with me and he felt obligated to stay. Now that I'm an adult with 2 kids myself, I think I realized that both of my parents are just extremely mentally ill and incapable of loving anyone, including themselves. I love my son, but he abused me when he turned that violence onto his sister by choking her. I had to say goodbye. I hope my mom answers this one. Not my story, but in a similar thread to this one, asking parents about when they realized they raised a monster, someone linked to this post. TL, doctor of that post. The son was a dipshit as a teen but took it way further by eventually raping his own mother, who committed suicide a year after. I've disowned one of my siblings, still have 5 other siblings. My sister is just a horrible person. She's the youngest of the 7. And she's been rotten since she was a teenager. She is much younger than the rest of us. So while the other 6 grew up together, she was almost like an only child. She treats everybody in her life like they're here to serve her needs. Some of the things she's put our mother through are truly horrible. I wouldn't give a shit if she disappeared forever. I am not sure if this counts. I didn't disown him, but I went through a dissociative episode after some really intense trauma. And I honestly couldn't feel any attachment and parental love that I had for my son. I tried not to show it, and behave as normally as possible because he was a child at the time and couldn't possibly understand what I was going through. It was pretty disturbing to not be able to feel any sense of bond with him. I eventually got better, but I definitely did not feel what I or most people would call love for him. I'm not a parent. I've never disowned a child. My parents disowned my oldest sister. I'm the youngest of 3 girls. My oldest sister had a horrible relationship with my father. Blames me for getting in the way of their relationship. She had her first baby, to spite him, when she was 16 years old. My father refused to give her money because she met a deadbeat child predator. And got pregnant again. Again. And again. She constantly put herself in deadbeat before kids. Dad would send money to girls for Christmas and birthdays and never heard a thing. He finally gave up. She's 30, has 6 daughters, and lives in a mobile home in North Carolina. We hadn't seen or heard from my sister until June of this year. My oldest niece contacted me asking to come to Florida, where I live, for the summer to get her and her sisters out of the trailer. I agree. Contact sister and she agrees. I set up plane tickets and organized the rooms they'll stay in. When they got here, they were completely disheveled, clothes visibly dirty, smelled foul, so covered in lice that my white towels stained gray from removing them. My niece informed me that they had been without water and electricity for 6 months. They live in a 2-bedroom mobile home. There are holes in the roof. Bugs and rats everywhere. As a family, we decide the girls aren't going back to North Carolina. We tell my sister to come to my parents' house in Florida to get her life together and get back on her feet. She refused because deadbeat is not invited. Ironically, she found out that deadbeat is cheating on her. She confronts him and he kicks her out of shithole trailer. Deadbeat said I would rather be homeless than live with you. Sister now works for the dollar store and doesn't pull her weight with kids. At least the girls are safe now. Edit. I never really finished my point with the story. My parents had disowned my oldest sister when she moved to North Carolina with deadbeat for 6 years until my niece reached out to me through Facebook. I had never even met my 2 youngest nieces until this event. I regret turning my back on my sister. I really hate her and what she put her babies through. But if we stayed in her life for those 6 years we maybe could have prevented this. Not me, but my great-grandma. This story is really sad but also interesting. So I thought I'd share it. She was a young Creole teenager. French Creole was her first language. And she was a quarter to half black like me, with tan skin and loose brown curls. She was born in Florida. But when things started getting worse for black people in Florida, her family relocated to Texas. For those who don't know, Creole people tend to play heavily into colorism. Although they are definitely mixed race. They prioritize light-skinned people. The looser your curl, the lighter your skin, the more white you look, the better. Her parents had high expectations for her to marry a wealthy, light-skinned man who would take care of her. Instead, she met my great-grandfather, a poor, dark-skinned man jumping from job to job working for farmers and trying to make a living. The two of them fell in love. They were just teenagers. Her parents threatened to disown her if she continued seeing him. And like a rebellious teenager, she refused. They wanted her to do better. She wanted to be in love. They might have broken up eventually, if she didn't get pregnant. But she did. And that was the end of it. Her parents basically said, "You've ruined your life," and disowned her right there. The whole family disowned her. No one would speak to her aunts, uncles, cousins. Not a single person stood up for her. So she had no choice. The two of them moved to California, so he could get a job picking oranges. He built a house. They had their first daughter. She was 16. She never saw her family again. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like. If you would like to see more content like this in the future, subscribe and turn on notifications to be notified about future videos. Now check out one of these interesting videos.